You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast, the penultimate one of the 2024-25 season. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as ever this season by Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. And what we're going to cover in this show is obviously Wednesday night's Europa League Final. If you're listening to this after Wednesday night, we are covering the Premier League and all three EFL playoff finals as well. Mark, before we get going and we go through the games we're going to cover specifically, that's obviously we will be covering the final day of the Premier League. It's obviously in terms of a lot of teams, nothing to play for. Are there any betting opportunities, fun betting opportunities to keep an eye out for the final day? I know we'll cover one or two towards the end of the show.
Yeah, we will. Always. I mean, I love final day. I think most people do. It's a bit of a shame. I think there's only really definitely going to be 4 games with absolutely something riding on it. There might be more, excuse me, depending on how the European trophies play out. So sort of leaving out 8th and below. But the Champions League places look like they could be really fun and exciting. We'll cover the Forest-Chelsea match, which looks to be absolutely epic. But yeah, in terms of my approach, my way of sort of betting, I've always said to people on the show and beyond really that as much as I want to make money, it has to be, I want to enjoy what I'm doing as well. And it has to be an element of fun involved. So for me, I like to target goals and I like to target cards. So goals, pretty obvious towards the end of the season. Most teams are either on the beach or preparing for the next season and just trying to have a bit of fun. So standards tend to drop and the goals tend to increase. I'll get to that later in the show with some numbers to back that up. But cards tend to go down as, less games with things riding on it, really. So if you can try and target some good referees with some matches without a huge amount to play for, you can possibly put together some unders, accas on the cards. So we had a bit of joy with Everton, Southampton last week, with the occasion sort of taking over there. There might be a few of those opportunities around again this weekend, really. You just kind of got to pick and choose depending on referee, scenario, who's involved, etc. and so on. So yeah, that's how I tend to sort of try and play it and pick out some big prices to something fun to cheer on, because it's rare we get this opportunity once a year to sort of have 10 Premier League games happening simultaneously. So it's always fun to sort of cheer on the goals and definitely not cheer on the cards if you're on the unders.
Yeah, we need to do it more often. 10 games playing at the same time. It's just great fun for those 2 hours. And Adrian, you've probably been involved in a few final days as a player. Anything stick out, or is it just everyone's on the beach at that point most times?
Yeah, well, I got nice memories actually sometimes. When I was leaving Southend, I sort of came on. I think everyone knew I was my contract was up and I was going to leave. So yeah, got a nice reception. But yeah, I agree with Mark. I think it's a little bit of carnage usually on the last day. I definitely feel that defensive standards drop. There's no doubt about that, because especially in the matches that don't matter as much, I think players are itching to kind of have a bit more fun if they can. So I definitely think that goals is the way forward.
Okay, yes, and a couple of fun ones, as I said, so keep an eye to later in the show with long shots, etc. Before we get going, insights.matchbook.com, full recap. There's 2 weeks to go to our Pod 50 offer. That's POD50. If you don't have a Matchbook account and want to get involved ahead of the Premier League final day, you can do multiples on the Matchbook betting exchange. You can, of course, use the bet builders as well. So we're giving you the benefits of the sports books, but also we do have that core exchange pricing as well. Just enter the bonus code POD50. That's POD50, and full T's and C's available on screen if you're watching on YouTube, or check out insights.matchbook.com. We'll start with a game that actually matters here, and not just matters. I mean, from memory, one of the most, maybe not most important games ever played, but definitely the most desperate in terms of where these will lead both these clubs. A very seismic game nonetheless. Spurs 3.1 in the 90-minute markets. United Favs at 2.56. The draw is 3.4. Both teams to score, yes, it's 1.81. The Asian handicap market is the draw no bet market with United Favs, and 2.5 is the total. Mark, we'll start with you. Is the right team favourite here for you in Manchester United, or are you staying away from that?
I am going to stay away from it because I'm going to sort of tail something that Adrian has talked about a couple of times on the show in recent weeks, which is I think any scenario, any result, any kind of match here is on the cards, because it's so difficult to know what we're going to get from these two teams. Yes, they've chucked the Premier League to one side in the last couple of weeks and months in preparation to try and win this competition to gain entry to the Champions League. And the sort of chalk and cheese efforts we've seen from Tottenham specifically, I was so impressed with their fortitude, their professionalism, and their approach really away at Eintracht Frankfurt in the quarterfinals. And then to survive that potential banana skin against Bodo in the way they did was very, very impressive. And from a Manchester United perspective, they can't score at all. They can't seem to create in the Premier League, but put them in the Europa League and they're scoring goals for fun, really. They've had probably a more difficult route to the final, and they've impressed. I mean, obviously that Athletic Bilbao match was conditioned by the red card, but they started strongly in that match anyhow. And really put the foot down thereafter. So, what are we going to get to what we're going to see from these two teams? I think it is very difficult. But to go back to your original question there, is the right team favoured here? Probably, but only just. And this is where I think I might differ from Adrian a little bit. I don't think United deserve to be that big a favourite. I mean, I know it's only narrow, but I wouldn't be. If Spurs had their full side out, I would possibly make them very narrow favourites. The fact they haven't got the best team out, their best three midfielders missing, Kulusevski, Maddison, Bergvall, that is a blow. They still, I think, can field a strong side. Bentancur and Basuma in the midfield pivot. You've got a reasonable foundation there from midfield, and further forward, they have the better options in attacking areas. Solanke, Son, I thought had a good 45 minutes last week against Villa. Brennan Johnson, Richarlison, Odebear's been playing okay. Tell. There's options there, players they can bring off the bench if this game does go the distance. Obviously, matches are ultimately won by goals scored, and Spurs, for me, have the edge in that particular department. And as I say, against all expectations, I was really impressed by their pragmatism and professionalism in those recent away games in Europe. More than enough to suggest that they are capable of being a resilient and balanced enough outfit to get a result in this match. We saw it against Liverpool in the League Cup first leg. When push comes to shove, this team can compete with the best. And kind of working backwards here, but I found and unearthed quite an amazing stat really based around Spurs under Ange Postecoglou, which I think is quite relevant coming into this game, because the back five, the first choice back five, hasn't played often enough, but they have played 30 times now under Ange Postecoglou. That's Vicario in goal, Porro, Udogie as fullbacks, Romero and Van der Ven as centre-backs. That's 30 games with that back five. And Tottenham's record, when those back five have started, 18 wins, 6 draws, 6 defeats. That's a remarkably good record. That's 2 points per game over a decent sample size. To put that into perspective, if you're averaging 2 points per game in the Premier League across the full season, this year you'd have 76 points. Arsenal are second right now with 71 points. That's quite significant, I think. And, Spurs are missing those 3 potential midfield starters, but I still think they can be competitive in this match. So if push came to shove, I would back Tottenham with a quarter goal start around 1.8 here. But I'm not going to, because I think the draw is a massive runner, and I just find both sides completely erratic. So I've kind of taken a stance there on Spurs. I'll let Adrian sort of talk about Manchester United rather than sort of going on and on and on. But going back to your original question, if I had to, I'd edge towards Tottenham here, but I know that's not a widespread view.
Okay, Adrian, take it away on Manchester United. I mean, I've been looking for that stat on Ange's and the injuries now. I couldn't never really found it, but I think Mark's outlaid something that would just give you a glimmer of hope if you're an Ange fan, that something there might be working with Spurs. Obviously, this is a one-off final, but it's going to be crucial.
Great stat on the back five. But how many times has that happened this season? That's what I'd say. I think a lot of those games must have been at the start of last season where Spurs were flying. That's a long time ago. That's the caveat to it. I mean, how often have they played together this season? And that's a factor as well for me. If that's the back five he names, have that body of work in recent times to draw upon. But it is a good stat, and I do think that's the back four I would certainly select if I was him. I'm not a huge. I know that Jed Spencer's had a decent season, but I've just never been sold on him. I just think it's a little bit casual for me, and I don't want my defenders to be laid back. If I'm brutally honest, look, he's laid it out really well, Mark. I mean, it is hard to. You could build a case against both teams very easily here. I'm going to try and side with Manchester United here. Look, they haven't beaten Spurs in 6 meetings, which on the face of it is a big negative. But look, a little bit like Arsenal against Newcastle, lost 3 in a row, hadn't scored. It was one of those cases where I just thought they can't lose for a 4th successive time to Newcastle, and they didn't. And I just think that United will surely have learned some lessons and that they'll be tougher to beat this time around. I actually thought in the 1-0 loss at Tottenham in February, I think it was, United had better chances. I think that they played better and were a little bit unlucky not to get something out of that game. There's the factor as well around Ange. Obviously, it's a lot. I mean, it is a one-off game, and players are going to be highly motivated. But I feel there's a bit more uncertainty around him than Amorim, and I wonder whether that's a negative as well moving forwards. And the other factor is the best player on the pitch is Bruno Fernandes by some distance. And where's he going to play? He's going to play in central midfield, I would have thought. The weak area of Tottenham, no doubt about that. You know, that is an area of the pitch I think Manchester United can certainly win. He's right about Spurs having more forward options, no doubt about that. But in Bruno, they do have someone that has a habit of sort of turning up on a big occasion and certainly lifting the team when they need it. They've obviously won in Bilbao as well. I mean, it's not something you'll find in any sort of stat, or you know, you can't put a stat on it. But having gone there and won has to make them feel quite comfortable in the surroundings. So I think that's a little plus. And I do think that, you know, there's more players in the United team that have won trophies. I mean, a lot more. And again, I think that could be a factor here. There are players in the United team that have been involved in a lot of these big events, and they've turned up for them. And no matter how bad they've been this season, and boy, have they been bad, I just feel that they will just have maybe a bit more nous than Tottenham Hotspur in this game. I also liked Amorim's approach, and a lot of people would disagree with me, but I like the fact that he played a strong team at Chelsea to keep them in rhythm rather than going with a total B team like Ange Postecoglou did at Villa. I would have preferred it if it was my team to have given the boys a run out. Look, I'm going to go with Man United double chance here. I'm going to back them not to lose. I think the draw is definitely a player, definitely. But Man U double chance, not to lose in 90 minutes, and I'm going to pair it with under 3.5 goals on the basis that it's a final with so much at stake. And yes, it could escalate. It could be crazy. Man United have been involved in plenty of those games this season. Actually, Spurs are involved in a lot as well, aren't they? But I just think that with so much at stake here, this is far more likely, in my opinion, to be cagey and a match where players are afraid to make the mistake that cost them. So, yeah, under 3.5 for me. And Man United double chance, it's 1.94.
Okay, and Mark, over to you. You're going to target the cards. Marcus here. You can see this getting out of hand.
Yeah, for all the reasons we've talked about, the desperation. This feels almost like a playoff final, I guess. You know, it's all or nothing, really. Can you gain entry into the Europe's top table and the riches that come with it, or are you going to be left on the outside of Europe altogether? It's basically the difference between having a successful season and an absolute disaster. So, you know, I was looking forward to this game. I think we all are from a neutral perspective because of the desperation on both sides. But I got even more excited when I saw the refereeing appointment, which is Felix Weyer, the German, who has officiated England a couple of times in major tournaments, and the press were very quick to drag up his previous misdemeanors. He was once banned, basically, from officiating for 6 months for taking a bribe from another official who was subsequently banned for life. So that's always been kind of dredged up, really, when he comes to referee an English team. He did the PSG Arsenal semi-final second leg and gave 6 cards, which is very much in keeping with his performances refereeing UEFA club games. So I looked at his entire career across European club competitions, 5.33 cards per game. But if you look at his last 24 UEFA club games, he's given at least 5 cards in 20 of those 24 matches, 6 cards or more in 18 of those 24, and 7 of those 24 have featured a red card. So, like, magnificent numbers, if you like, backing cards. And being this an enormous match between 2 Premier League sides, we all know the importance of it. Chuck in the card-heavy referee, and to be able to get over 4.5 cards onside really did appeal to me here. So I'm going to back that as the foundation to a bet builder alongside over 0.5 goals. I understand Adrian's thoughts and the fact it is a final, but ultimately, I do think there will be goals. Spurs have played 58 matches across all competitions. Only one of those has ended 0-0. Tamworth, of all teams in the FA Cup, Man United have played 58 times across all competitions. Only 3 of those have ended goalless. So you've got well over 100 games between these 2 teams combined. Just 4 have ended 0-0. And plus the 3 meetings between these 2 teams this season have featured 11 goals. Spurs just don't get involved in 0-0s, do they? So famous last words. But yeah, I'll combine over 0.5 goals alongside over 4.5 cards for a 1.8 shot.
Okay, and with Mark a little bit of doubt on that Manchester United double chance, this is going to be our £10 podcast bet builder money back special. So we're going to combine one of each from the guys. Mark's over 4.5 cards shout and Adrian's under 3.5 goals shout. That gives you a 2.2 shot. £10 podcast bet builder money back special. Just back that with Matchbook through the bet builder, and if it loses, you get your money back as a free bet up to £10. Full T's and C's on insights.matchbook.com. Now let's move on to Sheffield United versus Sunderland. And Adrian, we'll start with you. Sheffield United marginal favourite. Same question I asked Mark for the Europa League Final. Is the right team favourite here?
Yeah, definitely, in my opinion. They finished 14 points ahead of them for a start. There's one point in the season, obviously, where they were pretty tight. But for most of this campaign, Sheffield United have been one step ahead of Sunderland. 14 points is the gap. Never before, well, not since in the current format, since 1989, have 2 finalists met in an EFL playoff final that have had such a points discrepancy. So, when you think about that, Sheffield United are certainly worthy favourites. I was really impressed with them against Bristol City. Nice and calm, got the job done. Obviously, things went in their favour with the red card, but they were nice and calm and they looked relaxed. And I think that having Chris Wilder there, old experienced head, I think will hopefully help them at Wembley. Obviously, they've got Wembley hoodoo, haven't won there. Have a terrible, terrible record in the playoffs. But in this year of all years, when Newcastle have broke their hoodoo, Crystal Palace have broke theirs beneath the arch, then I kind of think Sheffield United are ready to do the same. They're just a better team, and they certainly looked better across the playoff semi-finals, in my opinion, where I think Coventry are really unlucky not to go through. That said, Regis Labrie has really got them organised. They were defensively excellent against Coventry. And they will be again here, I'm sure. I'm sure they'll be tough to break down. But my worries for Sunderland is that really neither Wideman's in great form. I don't think Bellingham's in good form. Rigg has kind of been left out of the team. He's a top talent, but he's not really at it at the moment. Isidore's not in good form. There's only really got one player that's flying at the moment, and that's Eliza Mayenda, who's very, very good. But is that going to be enough against a Sheffield United team that have got multiple goal threats? You've got Big Kiefer Moore, Tyrese Campbell, you've got Gus Harmer, the player of the year, loads of others as well. Callum O'Haire, who scored across both semi-finals off the bench. I just think they've got more options, Sheffield United. And if it gets won by the bench, then Sheffield United certainly have the advantage. So I want to be on Sheffield United's side here. I'm going to go with pair it with under 3.5 goals because 42 of 48 matches for the Blades have gone under 3.5. 38 of 46 Sunderland matches have gone under 3.5. Championship's not like the Premier League. There's a lot of games that go under 3.5, especially involving these two who are good at defending. Sheffield United 24 clean sheets, Sunderland 17 clean sheets. So yeah, I feel like it's almost certain to be under 3.5 goals, if I'm honest. So to get that with the favourites at a price of 2.8, I'm happy to take that on.
Okay, Mark, Adrian's confident in Sheffield United here.
Yeah, understandably so. I knew Adrian would put together a great overview on the game, so I've kind of left that alone really and focused more on the data. I mean, I could pretty much just rinse and repeat what we spoke about 12 months ago ahead of the Championship playoff final, because I do so every season really, irrespective of who's playing. And last season we had Leeds versus Southampton, and the market was expecting a much more open, exciting, goal-heavy game. I remember over 2.5 goals was was trading around about odds on almost, and we managed to back under 2.5 goals, around about evens on this show, which is almost unheard of in a championship playoff final. But again, it stuck to the historic trends really of this match, because it is, as everyone says, the most valuable match in world football because of the high increase in revenue you get from reaching the Premier League. And quite often we get very cagey, very tight matches with very little goalmouth action. So I think the pressure of the occasion can cripple some sides, inspire others. Often it's a moment of magic or a big mistake that can prove decisive. And look, if you look at the data, it's now 27 years since the famous 4-4 draw between Sunderland and Charlton. In the following 26 years, 17 of those playoff finals, at 69%, have featured under 2.5 goals, and over half, 14 of those 26, have produced a maximum of 1 goal, including 8 of the most recent 12, including that Leeds Southampton match last season. So in terms of both teams to score betting, just 5 of the past 24 playoff finals have seen both sides score. So obviously the market is well aware of the magnitude of the match and the previous trends for low scoring matches. So the under 2.5 goals price this season is reflecting that, but there are still options. And for me, it's about going down the BTTS route and opposing both teams scoring. So BTTS No, as I say, has been a winner in 19 of the last 24 playoff finals. It's 183 for a repeat this time around. We've got third and fourth in terms of clean sheets kept in the championship this season. In the regular season, only the automatic promoted teams managed more. In the championship playoff semi-finals, 3 of the 4 legs featured BTTS No winners. The 4th was just minutes away from the clean sweep there. So I'm pretty happy and comfortable basically just taking a blind bet here on both teams to score no. As I say, this kind of isn't our first rodeo here. We've seen these finals every year and almost all of them follow the same sort of narrative. So happy to beat BTTS No at 183. But yeah, if you ask me who's going to win it, I'd be relatively confident that Sheffield United are the play here alongside Adrian. But we've seen some prizes before, but yeah, they have been head and shoulders above Sunderland for the most of the season. Sunderland were brilliant for up until early spring or late winter, really, and things started to fall away. But yeah, they're quite fortunate to be here. So Blade should be promoted, but the best bet for me is definitely both teams to score no.
Okay, 2 confidence shouts, to be fair. With that endorsement from Mark, will lean towards Adrian's shout of Sheffield United to win and under 3.5 goals. That's 2.8. Let's move on to the Premier League final day, and we've got a fascinating top 5 battle. Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa all on 66, City and Forest on 65. Now City play midweek tonight as we're recording Tuesday night, so if you have, obviously, if we're recording that, just to timestamp the recording there. Adrian, we'll start with you. Chelsea 2.28 favourites away at the City ground. I mean, how, sum up the permutations for us here, and then how this game is going to set up tactically.
Yeah, I don't see them being good value, I have to say, at that price. Look, if Forest win, Forest finish above Chelsea. Simple as that. So Chelsea need to avoid defeat to finish above Forest. Whether that be enough for Champions League, we'll see how the other results go, I guess. But yeah, Forest, if everybody wins and Chelsea don't, then Chelsea will finish 7th. They'll drop into the Conference League again, unless, of course, they win the Conference League final, which would then open up 8th place for another spot. So, which I think is actually quite a plausible situation. I give Forest a great chance here. I really do. Why do I give them a chance? Well, Chelsea on the road are not great. They've lost to all of the top 8 away from home this season. Every match they've had against the current top 8 away from Stamford Bridge, they've got beaten. The highest ranked side they've won against on the road is Fulham, who are in 10th. And remember, they needed last kick of the match winner there. So, the form line for Chelsea away from Stamford Bridge is pretty rotten. They've not scored very many goals on the road either. They've scored 7 in 11 games away to the top 13. So if you're stretching it down a bit in that league table, scored 7 goals in 11 away matches to the top 13. They've blanked in 4 of the matches against the top 8. That's 4 of 7 matches, 4 of 6, because they can't play themselves and they haven't played Forest yet. So blanked in 4 or 6. So these are reasons to oppose Chelsea for me, who don't have a striker. Remember, obviously, Jackson's not available. Will he go with Tyreek George again, or is he going to go with Neto up front? and maybe reconfigure. They'll probably put Enzo Fernandez maybe in a more advanced position as a 10 and move Palmer wide. There's a little bit of uncertainty, isn't there, over what Maresca should do. Forest's big win, wasn't it, at West Ham? I kind of thought that would happen, but yeah, they attacked that very well. I thought Nottingham Forest. Okay, it got a bit squeaky towards the end, but by and large they played really well in it. Hudson-Odoi is going to be fit. Murillo's okay, I'm told. So, and look, the hunger is going to be off the scale, isn't it? At the City Ground. I mean, it's a great atmosphere always there, but it's going to be absolutely bouncing, and it'll be pretty intimidating. And I think the Forest players will be massively up for this. Now, can they handle that atmosphere? Let's see. Don't know. But if you look at their performances at the City Ground against the best teams this year, pretty good actually. Against the top 8 at home, 1-3, drawn 2, lost 1. Lost to Newcastle, but that's the only one. So I'm going to go with Forest here. I'm going to say they're going to do it. They've worked so hard to give themselves a shot at the top 5. Whether a win here will be enough, maybe not. But I think they can beat Chelsea and at least guarantee qualification to the Europa League. I'm going to pair it with under 4.5 just to be a little bit greedy, because only 2 home games all season have gone over 4.5. That crazy 7-0 against Brighton, and the Southampton game, which was a bit nuts as well. I was at that game. Every other game's been under 4.5, and most are under 3.5 really. So Forest and under 4.5 is a nice price. 3.55.
Just above 5-2 on Matchbook. And Mark, Adrian set that up well. It's just a massive, massive game, potentially Champions League football at the City Ground if they beat Chelsea at home.
Yeah, so just to remind listeners, we're speaking on Tuesday morning, and as yet there's been no referee assigned for the match, and cards markets won't be released until a little bit later in the week. But that'll be a real keen interest for me when those markets begin to develop and release, because as we've talked about with Spurs Man United, this is an enormous match, all or nothing really approach, and I'd expect there to be plenty of cards and tension in the air at the City Ground. I want to be pro Forest here as well. Actually, I was critical of them ahead of their trip to West Ham. I felt they were suffering a little bit from imposter syndrome, the pressure of the situation, the mental and physical fatigue, the loss of form. And I thought they were pretty good for the most part at West Ham, continuing their impressive record against the bottom half, where they've been almost flawless this season. They were pretty much back to their best for the most part. There was a real sort of go out and there and sort of do it for Taiwo Onyi attitude about them. There's been a lot of talk this week about his horrific ordeal, has kind of reunited the group, refocused minds, and that performance certainly suggested that was the case. There was a real renewal of their kind of principles, their identity of scoring early, sitting deep, staying solid, playing on the counter-attack and sort of repelling that pressure. And Matt Sells was very good, again, making some very good interventions. Morgan Gibbs-White was outstanding. Nico Williams has been one of the, I think, more underrated players in the Premier League this season. Again, brilliant. Alanga contributing again. Having Murillo back at centre-back was a big key moment for them, and having him in the second half despite that injury too. I think there's a lot to like. And look, the City Ground, I think more recently has been a bit of a twitchy place for Forest to play out. Perhaps the pressure has been there, but I just think in what will feel like a bit of a playoff sort of semi-final second leg environment where your team needs to win after losing the first leg, I think it'll be absolutely bouncing. And I think the Forest players will be inspired by that. So yeah, they've only lost 4 times at home in the Premier League this season. And yes, I am fickle enough to have opposed them last week and now want to be with them based on one real performance. But I think there's been signs of them raising their game in these kind of environments, as Adrian has already suggested, when the big boys come to town. So I'm going to play a little bit more pragmatically here, but Forest double chance and over 0.5 goals is a 4 to 5 shot. And I think that's a reasonable, a very decent price, considering for all the same reasons, again, as Adrian, I've not been convinced by Chelsea, despite this recent run of 4 wins in 5 and 7 wins in 11. They made real heavy work of beating a historically bad Man United side last weekend at home. Fortunate to face Liverpool when they did. Their performances against Everton, Fulham, Ipswich and Brentford were bang average before then. And sort of prior to those matches, their wins came against Spurs, Saints and Leicester. I looked at the last 10 Premier League matches, and they're averaging 1.16 non-penalty expected goals per game. In 7 of those 10 matches, they failed to hit 1.1 expected goals or more. There's no focal point here without Jackson. They just look bereft of inspiration and invention. And their away record, just 1 win on the road now since mid-December in the Premier League. Their away record at teams in the top 13 is abysmal. 1 win, scoring just 7 goals in that 10-game sample. Take it further, against the top 9, just 1.1 against the top 9 away from home, scoring just 3 goals. There's a lot of head here, but also a bit of heart here, hoping that Forest can do the job. And let's have Chelsea back in the Conference League where they belong.
Well, it's probably the most unlikely of the 3, given what Adrian outlined, but that's an amazing scenario, potentially. It would actually be so funny if they lose the Conference League final and have to play in it again. We will lock in Forest double chance over half a goal just to be a little bit safe, 1.8, but Adrian's is quite appealing at 3.55 if you think that's the way the game's going to go. Insights.matchbook.com, full recaps of all the guys' picks. We've any other bets time now, and Adrian, you've a fun ACCA for us on the 3 playoff finals, meeting some of those trends that Mark talks about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit of end of season fun, really. I'm going to do an ACCA on all 3 EFL playoff finals, Championship, League One and League Two, and say that they're all going to feature under 2.5 goals. Mark's kind of done the legwork in terms of the historical record. You know, they really are low scoring affairs, usually, not always, but there's a very strong possibility, in my mind at least, that these games will all be quite low scoring. 10 of the last 12 Championship finals under 2.5. 5 of the last 8 League One playoff finals under 2.5, and 7 of the last 11 League Two playoff finals under 2.5. So, you know, the numbers are on our side. What I would also say is that all 6 teams really are pretty tight, pretty solid. Sheffield United, absolutely. Sunderland, definitely as well. You saw that across the semi-finals. And Charlton do not give much away at all. Leyton Orient's defensive record at times this season has been outstanding. Rode their luck, I have to say, against Stockport, but they're there on merit. And Wimbledon have the best defensive record in League Two. They're clean sheet kings, and Walsall have sort of found or rediscovered some great defensive form as well. So yeah, I can see all these games being pretty tight. So if you fancy this ACCA, it comes out around 3.75. Maybe slightly better.
Okay, 11-4, 3-1 shot. And the second one is just Walsall versus Wimbledon, specifically, Adrian.
Yes, yeah. So this one of the 3, I maybe see this as the most likely to be super cagey. Wimbledon have won to 0 in 35% of their games this season, which I think is really impressive. That was in the regular season. They've had another 2 clean sheet wins in the playoff semis as well. So that once they get in front, they tend to kind of see it out. Walsall have won to 0 12 times as well this season, by the way. So, you know, if they score first, there's a potential that they could see the job through, because Wimbledon aren't blessed, I wouldn't say, with a great forward line. They've got a lot of pace up front, unfortunately. But they do know how to keep things tight. Clean sheet wise, 23 clean sheets from 48 games for the Dons, 15 clean sheets for Walsall. Wimbledon games averaged 1.98 in the regular season. Only a third of Wimbledon matches went over 2.5 goals. Walsall a few more. And between them, they've actually, even though they're in the playoff final, between them this season, they've racked up 25 blanks. So there are plenty of occasions where Wimbledon have failed to score, and Walsall too. So wrapping all that up, I'm going for one of my faves, really, under 2.5 goals, and both teams to score no. So we're looking at 0-0, 1-0 either way, or 2-0 either way. That's kind of how I see it. So 1.84 is your price on that.
Okay, Mark, you have 2 selections for us. I mean, it goes from the Serie A title race to run-of-the-mill League of Ireland Premier Division. So I love this way adaptability you go throughout the leagues in Europe. So just rattle it off here, these couple of selections.
Yeah, we'll start with the glamour, which is Galway. No, it's Napoli versus Cagliari. So yeah, the Serie A season comes to an end this weekend, and they've moved Napoli and Inter's games to Friday night. The rest of the coupon plays out over the weekend. There's 2 games on Saturday, sort of meaningless matches really, and Sunday is reserved for the Champions League race and the relegation battle. But the league are trying to ramp up interest in this title race and moving it to Friday night, because these 2 teams have been embroiled in what seems like just a fascinating twist and turns battle to see who might be crowned as Scudetto champions. And if anyone saw last Sunday night, both Napoli and Inter were held, but the last 15 minutes and stoppage time across both games were quite remarkable, really. So Inter are 1 point behind Napoli. They were 2-1 up at home to Lazio, conceded a penalty in stoppage time for the game to go 2-2. Then 9 minutes into stoppage time, they scored what they thought was a winner, only for VAR to overturn it for an offside. While Napoli were held 0-0 at Parma, they hit the woodwork twice and also saw a stoppage time penalty overturned by VAR. So there was huge drama in both games, and both coaches really lost their cool amidst it all. So Antonio Conte and Simone Inzaghi are both banned from the touchline on Friday night in their respective matches. So for Napoli, I think it might be a good thing, actually, because Conte has been really struggling lately. They know obviously a win now secures them a title at home to Cagliari, but Conte said after that 0-0 draw with Parma that he's exhausted. It's the most difficult season of his career. Not sure I really agree with that later statement, but Napoli haven't had European commitments, but he's clearly very stressed, and perhaps it's starting to play out on his players as well, because he's been as frantic as always on the sidelines. But Napoli, in terms of the bet, I think they will get the job done here. Cagliari should be relatively obliging visitors here, so understandably, the Napoli are very strong favourites here, around 1.2 on the exchange, but we can back them to win alongside under 3.5 goals at 2.1, which is a massive leap. It's something we did against Torino a fortnight ago and sort of lost out late on in that match. But we've got the 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 and the 2-1 onside, and 11 of their 13 games at home against teams in 7th and below have seen Napoli win. 10 of those games have seen Napoli win and under 3.5 goals. 20 of their 23 league wins this season have come alongside under 3.5 goals, including all bar 1 at home, and overall just 6 of their league matches have featured 4 goals or more. And as I say, Cagliari 14th now, safe after beating Venezia last weekend. They've been really superb actually against the sort of fellow strugglers towards the bottom end, but fall short against elite sides. They've gone 1 win, 8 draws, 16 defeats against teams above them. They've also lost 10 of 18 away. They're averaging just 0.89 goals per game away. And at top 12 teams, they've lost 8 of 11 and scored just 5 times. So I think Napoli should be capable. Well, definitely are capable, but they should be able to win this game. But I don't expect it to escalate into something high scoring. So 2.1 odds against on Napoli and under 3.5 goals.
Okay, second selection, Galway versus Cork. If you said to me Galway United would be involved in both teams to score show from you, Mark, I would say no chance. But I guess this is partially they're conceding more goals this year, but also Cork City are conceding non-stop.
Yeah, so the summer leagues are well underway. I've started digging into these now that the European seasons are starting to sort of close out, really. And I've not delved too deep into the League of Ireland just yet, but sort of looking for a few prices. And this one really caught my attention on Friday night. It's 8th versus 9th in the 10-team League of Ireland Premier, but there is an 8-point difference between the sides. Galway are 8th. They're 7 points off second place. But after a bright start, they've really sort of fallen apart of late. 4 defeats on the spin, 6 defeats in 9. Not in a great place right now. Cork are second bottom, only on goal difference. They're above the bottom side, so they've had it pretty tough so far. But Galway's recent record is quite off-putting here. You can understand why they're favourites, but I much prefer the goals angle here because traditionally this can be quite a low-scoring league. But if you look at the goals per game averages and the numbers so far across the division, there's suggestion that it could be a bit more exciting this season. And these two have certainly been at the forefront of that because neither of them can defend and both take, or at least Cork have taken quite a front foot approach to things if you're looking at the underlying data. But in terms of the raw stats, we're 16 games into the new season. Galway have managed 2 clean sheets. Cork have yet to keep a clean sheet. Galway have scored in 12 of 16. And despite sitting second bottom, Cork have scored in 14 of 16. They've had a BTTS hit rate of 14 from 16. It's 10 from 16 for Galway. So collectively, we've got 24 of 32 matches involving these two teams, featuring both teams to score winners. That's 76%. And that includes a 2-2 between the sides on the opening day of the season. So considering the circumstances, both sides should be fancying their chances here of at least getting on the score sheet and getting a good result. So in that theory, should play out for goals. So we're getting odds against 2.05 on both teams to score, which I think is looks like a really great price considering those underlying data and metrics.
Okay, yeah, that's 205, as Mark mentioned, to League of Ireland, looking like a very exciting season. Although Rovers have pulled 5 points clear since their win last night. Adrian, treble. Sorry, it's been a long season. Sheffield United, Charlton, and Wimbledon to get promoted in their respective playoff.
Yeah,
finals.
why not? I mean, yeah, we should probably learn that the playoffs are so unpredictable. From the semi-finals, we didn't get all of those right, but it's fun, isn't it, to have a little treble? I think on who's going to go up this weekend across the bank holiday. For the reasons outlined earlier, Sheffield United obviously 14 points more than Sunderland over the season, more depth, better form. Certainly the attacking players in far better shape, barring Mayenda, all in the Blade shirt. So Sheffield United for me. Charlton Orient is a tough one to call because Orient have amazing momentum, but Charlton don't give a lot away. They're hard to break down. They're horrible to play against. And in Matty Godden, I think they've got a match winner in waiting. So I'm going to back Charlton. And then the Wimbledon-Walsall game, another really tight one. But Wimbledon with the best defence. They didn't, they gave up some chances against Notts County, certainly in the first leg, but, they got a great goalkeeper, excellent back three. And I watched both teams, Wimbledon and Walsall, across, in the flesh. I was only slightly more impressed by Wimbledon. I think there's got a few more strings to their bow. Walsall, they were like Crystal Palace. They'll sit in and wait, and they'll break super quickly and look to hurt you that way. Wimbledon can beat you in 2 or 3 different ways. So I think that gives them the advantage. So I'm not looking for 90-minute winners here, by the way. This is to lift the cup. I never know why they get a cup. I suppose they have to, but it's a bit of a nonsense, isn't it? It's all about promotion. So it's Sheffield United, Charlton, and Wimbledon to all get promoted. It's a 4.65 long shot.
Okay, yeah, I'm always in 50-50 on that because it's obviously ridiculous, but it's also you got to celebrate at Wembley, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
I can see why they did it, but I don't agree with it. If that makes sense. Mark, Premier League accumulator for us all here. You can, as mentioned, top of the show. One of the only exchanges where you can do multiples is Matchbook, and you've got a couple of ACCAs here, and I guess these are so big prices because there's certain games on a final day that ordinarily would be low scoring games, but I guess the final day adds to it, and you might not artificially get a bigger price, but there could be a hint of value in some of these accumulators.
Yeah, definitely. So as we said at the top of the show, there's probably 4 games which definitely matter on Sunday. There might be more depending on what happens elsewhere, but most teams have either completed their campaign, reached their seasonal targets and aspirations, and we'll be looking forward to the summer now. So we always get a few wild and wacky scorelines. There's some really crazy ones down the years. I remember Stoke absolutely spanking Liverpool. There's a Middlesbrough thrash Man City. There's always a few wild games, and obviously motivation comes into it too. But also most teams and players may have already checked out for summer. So as Adrian said, defensive principles and standards may slacken off now for the final day of the season, and that tends to produce more goals. So I'm going to propose 2 multiples. The first one is an over 1.5 goals tenfold in the Premier League. Might sound ambitious, but we're getting around 4-1 on this. And having looked at the last 10 seasons worth of Premier League data on match day 38, this selection has already won 3 times in that 10-year sample, and 4 other years missed out by just 1 match. So 7 of the 10 seasons we've either been paid out or missed out by just the 1 goal, or 1 game, I should say. So 87 of those 100 matches have featured 2 goals or more, 87%. That hit rate isn't bad at all. For over 2.5 goals, which I'm also going to propose here at 80-1, you have a 65% success rate across those 100 games. Now, none of those 10 seasons did see the over 2.5 goals ACCA lands, but perhaps we're due this time around. So the goal average on match day 38 across the last 10 Premier League seasons comes in at 3.41. This season in the Premier League, 81% of the games have gone over 1.5 goals, 2.94 goals per game as well, which is pretty healthy compared to previous years. So we've had quite a goal-heavy season anyhow in the Premier League. Hopefully it continues, and hopefully we see a little bit more to get this over the line. 2 fun ones really to cheer on. The main one, over 1.5 goals, the ACCA in the Premier League, which is 4-1. And if you want to really sort of shoot for the stars, the over 2.5 goals ACCA, it should be around 80-1.
If he lands this one, Dan, I can just picture O'Haire, all summer long, sat back on his lounger, beer in hand, smoking a cigar. Yeah, thank you very much, pal.
See you next May.
I had a quick look at the fixtures. Half doable, I would say. They all sort of, because I was looking for an example of a low-scoring game for the Bournemouth, Leicester, Adrian, Fulham City, Ipswich, West Ham, Liverpool, Palace, United, Villa, Newcastle, Everton, Forest, Chelsea, Southampton, Arsenal. There's goals in that game.
Yeah,
Spurs,
United,
Brighton,
Villa
Wolves, Everton,
would
Wolves,
worry
Everton.
me. Yeah, United,
Okay.
Villa, I think. But let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great shout. Yeah, why not?
Right. Why not? Exactly. Fun one to cheer on, as Mark said at the start of the season. Adrian, your best bet is Newcastle United at home to Everton. Newcastle being probably one of the standout teams second half of the season. Can they just kick one more victory to seal Champions League football?
I think so. Yeah, I think it feels like almost nailed on home win to me. I don't see Newcastle blowing this. I really don't. They were brilliant in the first half against Arsenal. They were absolutely outstanding. Completely outplayed the Gunners. Should have scored 3 goals. David Raya made some amazing saves. Yeah, they tailed off a bit in the second half, but they come on strong at the end. I just thought they looked really, really good. And this was without Alexander Isak, who I'm sure they'll wheel out for this last match of the season. Unless that injury really is a proper serious one, I think surely he'll feature. So, yeah, for me, at St James's Park against an Everton team that used up a lot of emotional energy this weekend, winning their final ever match at Goodison Park. Big celebrations. It was the kind of day that might take a bit out of you, and the kind of day that makes you think, it's actually the end of the season, but it's not. They've got to go and play one more game, and it's going to be a really tough one in a hostile environment where the Magpies are mega up for it. And I just don't know if Everton have got the minerals to handle it, to be honest. Newcastle have won 6 home games in a row. They've won 8 of their last 12 Premier League matches. Haven't conceded in any of the last 3 home games. That's 3 wins to 0, which is my pick here. Newcastle and both teams to score no. Newcastle 1-0 at home to Chelsea, at home to Arsenal, at home to Villa. And then you flip it around to Everton. Everton against the top 7 this season. They've blanked in 8 of 13 games, failed to score at Anfield, at Emirates, and at Stamford Bridge as well. So, yeah, I just see this being 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, like something comfy and routine for Newcastle United, and who are a really, really short price for obvious reasons to win the game. But if you are bold enough to say that Everton won't score, Newcastle to win to 0 is 2.26, which I find very appealing.
Okay, and lock in your final best bet, or final bet of the show, Mark, with one we covered earlier on. Both teams score now in the Championship playoff final.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite betting weekends of the season, the bank holiday weekend, when you get all 3 playoff finals back to back, really. And anything that opposes goals gets my interest. The 0-0 half time, under 2.5 goals, the 0-0 full time, under 1.5 goals, all of it. Chuck it all in the trebles, as Adrian is doing as well, because I like them all. But BTTS no gets my vote in this game. As I say, it's 1 in 19 of the last 24 Championship playoff finals, 3 of the 4 playoff semi-finals already. The 2 teams kept more clean sheets than any sides other than the automatic promoted teams in the Championship too. So, I really like the look of this. Obviously, the high magnitude match, the high pressurized environment, the Wembley, the big pitch, just tends to cripple some sides, and the goals total always tends to suffer because of that. So if Leeds Southampton can end just 1-0, then absolutely Sheffield United v Sunderland can repeat that feat too. So happy to back it at 183.
Okay, that is all for today. InsideStockMatchbook.com, full recap of all the guys' selection. We'll be back for one final show to cover the Champions League final amongst any other business there, if there's anything else to cover throughout. Maybe a bit of League of Ireland goals action, as Mark touched on in his any other bets section. But enjoy the weekend's football. Well, enjoy the Europa League final, of course, and enjoy the weekend's football. Should be a fascinating weekend throughout with the playoff finals and Premier League final day. And we'll chat to you to preview the Champions League final next week. Bye-bye.